Hello, everybody. It's time for some new patch notes. I'm Silent Eric. If you're new here, welcome. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. But more importantly, we have a variety patch for Legends of Runeterra, which means we have some new cards. Let's take a look. This patch includes the release of Trusty Adnir, the card we've collaborated with community member Rusticles. There was a really nice article about that. I recommend reading it to create. Uh, yeah, basically, Rusticles has uh, a degenerative disability and has been part of the community, worked together with Riot, and put in a card to represent him and his family and what he's going through, which is pretty cool. So we've already seen that card, but we'll see it down here again. We have updates on competitive, balance changes filled with puns thanks to our resident dad joke extraordinaire designer, and a whole slew of brand new cards to shake up the meta. There's also some new skins and remixes on our most musical champions. Remix Rumble skin line. Nice. And we'll be getting this on the 8th, which is, I believe, tomorrow. It is, in fact, tomorrow, as of this recording. All right, community spotlight on Rusticles. Dev for a Day was very nice. There was some cool stuff in there. It's a very touching story. I highly recommend reading that on your own. Yeah, and for every Adnir's Adventure quest players complete, Riot will contribute money towards the Riot Games Social Impact Fund. Nice. Uh, so yeah, ALS. That's the disease. It's been amazing to work with. A whole bunch of people on the team poured their heart and soul into this card. Yeah. So, as it says here, read that article. It's well worth the read. Let's take a look at some new cards, though. First, in Noxus, we have a Noxian Dragon. 6 mana, 8/4 Challenger and Raged Fire Spitter. That means it is Titanic, and it has an elemental skill. Deal 2 to an enemy and 2 to the enemy nexus on play. So, this is going to be able to go into Jin if you want. It's going to be able to go into Annie, and you'll feel pretty good about it. Swain doesn't mind for non-combat damage. Uh, it will work if you're doing a Volibear Elemental Noxian thing. Yeah, overall, it fits into a couple of weird niches. What it's actually doing, it's removal to a small thing, and then it's a big challenger. It does a bit of burn damage to the Nexus. All in all, it's doing quite a bit. It is a dragon without fury, though. So although it will work for some dragon stuff, it will unfortunately not work with other dragon stuff that cares about specifically fury, which is a shame. It'd be a nice. It definitely pumps the power level if this thing did have fury, but I think it probably should as a dragon. I think it should. The trusty Adnir, the one that we saw before, made by Rusticles. We have a 4 mana 3/3 that, when summoned, summons a 1 mana 1/1. And it has, the 1/1 has support. Grow me to my supported allies stats this round. So it is a support card that enhances itself rather than helping whatever it's supporting, which is meant to represent more the way that Rusticles, the trusty Adnir, is able to nurture the kids. It's the kids' capacity to grow. I think there's some neat things you can do with that. A 4 mana slot fits okay into Lulu decks, although Lulu is not in standard at the moment. There's a couple ways that you can make this have some uses. The biggest downside, of course, is the fact that it does not actually have any keywords. But if you pair it with, if you were to pair it with Evelyn, I think you could make some stuff happen because this token is a 1 mana unit. So there might be something interesting there with Evelyn Adnir. Let's go ahead and move on. The Chemtech Drake. Oh, we're getting dragons. Getting dragons in all the other regions. This might be implying that we are going to get a new dragon champion in the next set. That's my immediate thought seeing this, is the idea that we might actually get, let's see, if we're getting a dragon next set, it would have to be in Targon, which is a region that somewhat cares about dragons, but, or rather, it's a region that has dragons, but, and has like some dragon support and synergy, but not that much. Yeah, Demacia kind of cares a little bit more about dragons. I don't, but these are dragons everywhere. Are we going to get a Runeterra dragon? A thing that grow dragons from every region? That seems a little unnecessary, but adding dragons to every region definitely makes that more likely than putting it in Targon. I guess we'll see. In any case, 8 mana, 8/6. So Titanic, when you play a spell, draw one. That's already very strong. That's not even the first time each turn. When you draw, while you have a full hand, deal 1 to the enemy nexus. Now that is interesting. So spells turn into card draw, so that's not mana advantage unless you play a spell that draws you cards, in which case you'll draw more. But that keeps your hand high so that you can overdraw. So it is card draw turned into burn. That is definitely interesting with Neela. That's interesting with Jana. There's plenty of times when you're running Jana and have the Sunken Temple that you end up overdrawing just because the amount of card draw you get is kind of silly. So Chemtech turning those wasted cards into damage, to free damage, is kind of cool. I really like Chemtech Drake. It is an 8 mana unit. It's going to come down really late in most decks unless you're running actual Freljordian ramp. But that is interesting. Freljord does lack card draw though, so I'm not sure if you would actually want to run P and Z Freljord just to ramp into this earlier. Because you need to ramp into this and then do card draw. In any case, Boadir of Blackened Ice. 8 mana, 8/8. When I'm summoned, summon 2 Frozen Thralls and advance them 2. Advance them 2/2. Oh. Oh my. Okay. Now this is a Lysandra Dragon for sure. This thing is going to come down. It's 1 for Lysandra. It gives you 2 Frozen Thralls that in 2 turns, or if you have any other advance effects, possibly even sooner, is going to get you more 8 mana units. That's going to get you the Watcher real quick. So this is, and all of these are dragons without fury. All these dragons from other regions. Huh. That is definitely very good for Lysandra. I'm not sure who else would want to do that necessarily. I mean, it is just kind of strong in general. So I think you can definitely do that. It definitely makes sense if you're running that with Shurima so that you have advance effects and can get those other 8/8s a bit quicker. Let's move on. The Dune Swallower. 5 mana, 9/6 in Shurima. Fearsome and Spell Shield to play me, kill an ally, or one of your mana gems 3 times. So this is a 5 mana huge unit. A 9/6 is really big for that cost, and it has Spell Shield. But you need to kill 3 allies or 3 mana gems or both. Interesting. It's been a while since we've seen things that care about, or rather, Shuriman effects that cost mana gems. It's interesting to see a unit that is making use of that. I think you're a lot better off killing allies to do that. If you have a bunch of 1-drops or something, this is going to fit in with Nasus, obviously. Nasus Kindred or anything like that. Any of those things were racking up a kill count. This will also level Callista, which is kind of funny. Yeah, all in all, that's I think that's pretty good. I think you might actually be able to find some decks. I don't think it's going to go into just every deck, but I think that will actually push Nasus back to the forefront again, which is kind of neat. Then we have a new Demacian card, the Kingfisher. 9 mana, 8/8, so they don't get a new dragon, they get a new boat. When I am summoned, draw one of each champion from your deck. In each round, the first time you summon a champion, rally. Wow. Okay. So that's 9 mana. It is Titanic. That gets you all your champions. So that's already really good. So Demacian ability to just find your champions. That works really well for Shurima, who likes to find champions. A Demacian Shurima deck. Obviously, you can run this with the Shuriman guy. What's his name? The guy that came out a couple sets ago that puts level 2 champions at the bottom of your deck. So setting those up for a Kingfisher to get them all out again is actually kind of neat. I do like that a lot. So that also goes with the 4/4, I believe, that summons a actual champion from your deck, as long as you have a bunch of unique champions. Interesting. I like the Kingfisher. I'm definitely going to build some decks around this. Kingfisher seems very fun. Then we have a new Bandle City dragon. Ooh, a Fey dragon. What do we have here? Portia, the Peculiar. Play 9 mana, 9/9, and play Manifest a Titanic follower and set its stats to 1/1 and its cost to 0. Now that is funny. Because that can get any of these previous things. It's Manifest, so you get a choice. But yeah, using Portia to get the Kingfisher, using Portia to get to Boadir. There's a couple you probably wouldn't want to get, but Manifest is giving you options. That is also very strong. A late game deck. So far, there isn't something that cares about actually playing Titanics. There's things that help you play Titanics, but not things that care that things were Titanic, I guess. I guess this is just kind of expanding what you can do with Volibear and Freljord. Sephirsa? Scourge of the Deep. It is a sea monster and dragon, and it is deep. It is an 8 mana 8/7, so even before going deep, it's already Titanic, and it only gets bigger. When you spend mana to play another unit, create a random card in hand of equal cost. It costs 0 and is fleeting. That is crazy. So you play this, and if it survives a round, you play a 4-drop, and you get a random 4-cost card that costs 0 and is fleeting. That is so random, but fun. It's giving you... It could give you anything. I'm not sure why you would run that in the deep deck, other than it being a sea monster. The fact that it is a sea monster means that you can lower its cost, which is pretty strong. You want this to kind of just stay out there, and then you just play units and get random stuff. I really like that. That seems fun. These are Kingfisher, Portia, and Saphirsa have all been really fun. These are just fun effects. Chemtech seems interesting to play around. It doesn't seem like it's like a oh wow what's gonna happen. It's just like it's a new thing to try and build. It's a new challenge. Enraged Fire Spitter is just kind of doing its own thing. Trusty Adnir, Boadir, Dune Swallow, those are all just kind of doing their own thing. But these three seem like they will make for some really fun decks. If you can get to the late game, man, you need to. There's some regions that have a harder time getting to the late game, but if you can do that, or if you can make the late game come to you, these look like they're going to be very fun. Let's see if we get any cards that are early game cards. Not yet. 6 mana Spectral Ironhound for Shadow Isles. To play me, kill an ally. When I'm summoned, you summon a 1,000 Clawed Deathwinder. So 6 mana, kill an ally, and you get a 5/3 and an 8/4 Fearsome. Okay. That is perfectly reasonable. It's kind of like the Kennen 5-drop, the one that makes the really big Storm Cloud Elemental. But it's a Shadow Isles version, so it's making a... It has a better stat line and makes a slightly better unit, maybe. But has a cost of killing an ally. I could see you putting this in a Nocturne deck, maybe, to try and get that 8 mana Fearsome to land, or running it with Shurima for the same reason. If you can make that 8 mana, if you can make Fearsome land that late in the game, that's going to be a devastating hit, possibly game winning. We move on to the Targon card. So there is one new card for every region, as you would expect. And lastly is Targon, the Veiled Protector. 5 mana, 4/5. When I am summoned, or you summon a Titanic ally, heal your Nexus 3. Okay, so this is what I was talking about for a control card. This is not going to help the late game come to you. It's going to help you survive to the late game and help you come back from having to wait for Titanic allies. This heals your Nexus 3 every time you get a Titanic ally, so the more often you can do it, the more you're just going to get a huge board. This will work with buffs as well, as long as you're summoning them Titanic. So it's not going to work for buffing things to the Titanic state, but it will work for you actually buffing things in your hand, like with Bard. So this will work very well with Chimes. It might even have Chimes on its antlers. I'm not sure. It's hard to see from here. But yeah, I think that this, going with Targon, going with Freljord, might be a way to make some of these late game things a bit more feasible. Those are the control regions after all, in terms of like the late game payoff. Big boy payoff. Then we get some card adjustments. Nerfs. Divine Whirlwind only does 1 to the Nexus now. As a versatile removal and burn spell, it's been really blowing away the competition, stealing a large number of wins for both Janna and non-Janna PNZ decks. We're focusing on the Nexus damage portion to particularly target the more aggressive strategies and leave space for other burn cards to see play. That makes sense. It was doing a lot. It was that 2 damage definitely added up, so lowering that makes sense. Cosmic Call. Invoke with cost reduction. Now it is if you pay 8, it only does the cost reduction. It doesn't give you an invoke. This new card has managed to invoke the wrath of many Eternal players since its release, and leave those who don't follow the Celestial Path seeing stars. We want to keep the big moments it can create, but the initial investment for that kind of power must come at a price. By removing the initial invoke, you're losing out on resources to gain future power, and hopefully create an opening for your opponent to spoil your plans. That is a big nerf. Losing out on that one invoke is very nice, but there's plenty of other ways to invoke. It's not going to kill the deck or anything, but it definitely makes that a lot less enticing. Uh, Janna, you need to see 8 cost reduced cards. Ooh, the level up has gotten a lot harder. Janna's been on a whirlwind tour of the top of the ladder, and even though she has counters, her decks have heavily influenced what can and can't be played competitively. By making her take a little bit longer to go full tornado, there's more time to answer Janna before you're flooded with value. You know what? I think that is entirely fair enough. There's plenty of other ways to reduce card costs so that you can still try and speed up that level up. But if you just have Janna on her own, she's going to take a while to level up. And she's still just doing work while she's on level 1. Uh, you're just not getting that extra card draw and not getting those crazy combo turns where everything you draw costs less. So I think totally valid. That's definitely going to hurt Janna decks a lot, but I think it's totally deserved. That's a good nerf, I think. Champion Strength goes to 9 mana. Totally fine. We've tried a lot of different angles with Champion Strength since its release, and while we feel the current version of the card is healthier, it's still a little bit too cheap for the game-ending power it can provide. Once again, fair enough. It really is a it really just is a game ender with elusives, with overwhelm, just with them having a board that you can't handle in the moment. It turns it into a board with big buffs that you can't handle. This suddenly turns it into a lot closer to a 4 Demacia plus playing. It's still better than playing 4 Demacia and playing a rally effect. It's more cost efficient than doing both of those things. So it's still good, and it's all in one card. This is still a good game ender for Demacia. Demacia, I think, needed that. Just push back that win a little bit. I think that they can still easily pull off wins with Champion Strength. It still does its job. It just will happen a little bit later, and it's a little bit more disruptible too, which is nice. So those are all the nerfs. Perfectly fine. We then look at buffs. Swain levels up sooner. Now that we're keeping a closer watch on a certain idol, we think Swain could have a little power back. He seems like a guy you can trust with power, right? Who's going to tell him? So, Swain levels up sooner. That is nice. Um, yeah, I can see that things like the Watchful Idol was making it so that Swain leveled up too much, and Swain had to pay for that. But now that that got nerfed, they can go ahead and make it so that Swain is back to leveling up a bit more early. I think that's a nice big buff for him. Swain is still very powerful. The fact that he has his overwhelm and everything, so that he can actually land those hits. He is a scary guy, a force to be reckoned with. Dame the Despoiler now has overwhelm. Okay. While Samira has made an impact in Standard in her past, some of her crew members have been left stranded on the shore. Want to start giving them a little lift, starting with the Dame, and explore more options in the future. So this is the one that buffed your board, and now it buffs your board and has Overwhelm herself, which is nice. Makes her a bit more worthwhile to play. A 3 mana 3/3 Overwhelm is already pretty good, and with Plunder, it is as good as running the Ballista. So I think that is a great nerf for the Dame. Makes the Dame very strong. Dedicant of the Challenge. We want the Dedicant to be high risk, high reward strategy for updraft decks. I played him quite a bit. His low base health wasn't letting him be up to the challenge. This buff should let him stick on the board more often, making the payoff for dishing your hand more worthwhile. I mean, he still doesn't have a keyword, so he still just kind of gets rid of your hand, gets you a new one. Playing him, the low health only really mattered when you were playing him just to try and draw a couple of cards and like mulligan the last little bits of your hand. So, yeah, I don't feel like that is gonna do that much for him, honestly. Yeah, I think he's gonna have the same problems he had before. Protective Broodfather is now Titanic. Broodfather's been hitting the same gen as some of our other pre-Titanic units and is now finally juicing up that dad bod. Okay, so this is now another Titanic unit, which makes Demacia Titanics a bit more viable. It also goes with all those new Titanic dragons and such being shown up above. This makes for potentially a Titanic Shyvana deck to matter a bit more. But overall, probably isn't going to do that much. Some of these kind of changes, making them 8/8s, is definitely helpful for Path of Champions, but for actual constructed, it's probably not going to mean that much. The stats are always just nice, though, even if hitting the threshold doesn't really matter. While Tryndamyr's level up might suggest you want him to die right away, he was dying up to the challenge a little too often. With some extra health, he can sneak in a few more round level 1 attacks before hitting his ultimate form. Okay. Tryndamyr having more health. I don't think that solves any of the issues with him, because his level up already made him super resilient. So, yeah, I mean, I guess it's a buff, but I don't think it's a buff that really matters that much. It'll make him more annoying in Path of Champions to fight against. And in actual play, he was already Titanic, so it's not helping there. Him surviving an extra to be at level 1 longer. His weakness was already obliterate effects or outright kill effects once he's died once. So I guess it makes it so that he's less likely to die once and then you kill him the second time with a kill spell. Sure. War Mother's Call. Let me do a quick reload, see if I can get those cards to load in. Nope. Okay. War Mother's Call. As we've added more splashly spells into the game, War Mother's Call has been sent directly to voicemail. With these new and improved rates, you can connect with units all over your deck earlier in the game. Okay, 1 turn earlier, you can get War Mother's Call going. That is pretty strong. That's pretty nice. That really turns that back into being a potential win condition when all the rage has been Clash of Giants. And I don't think this is going to steal Clash of Giants Thunder. Clash of Giants still just immediately gets you 2 guaranteed big things, whereas this is going to be drip feed you stuff over the course of the game. I still think this is probably fine. Captain Ledros, from a 9/6 to a 10/6. We've seen Shadow Isles showing up more often as a support region in recent patches, so we wanted to give them a little more finishing power to properly reward you for selling your soul to the Isles. While the extra attack may seem slight, this change does mean Ledros is ready to chop down the other half of the enemy nexus if he does manage to connect. True, that does make a big difference. If the enemy had full health, Ledros comes in, brings them down to 10, and if he isn't blocked, will finish them off. It turns Ledros back into being a true blue finisher. Although, without Atrocity, that's less of a big deal. And even then, it's unlikely that the opponent is at full health by the time you get to Captain Ledros, right? So that is nice. That is definitely a buff. It makes Ledros much more dangerous. The 1 point is hitting a threshold of lethal, but I think most of the time it isn't going to matter that much. It does mean that Ledros can actually fight Volibear, which is pretty cool. Good job, Ledros. The Necrotic Arachnoid is fearsome now. As mentioned above, we want to give Shadow Isle finishers a bit more finishing power. The Arachnoid is no exception. Plus, why would you be afraid of her nestlings, but not the big spider mama? It just makes sense. Can't argue with that logic. That is true. Yeah, it just makes sense. It's fearsome. It makes little fearsome things. Why wouldn't it also be fearsome? Look at it. It's scary looking. Does that matter? I mean, if you're running a Nocturne deck, you would hope that by turn 8 Nocturne's already leveled up, which means that the Arachnoid would have Fearsome anyway. So it isn't going to really matter there, I guess, which is the one place where you would think it would. So it's just kind of a change that makes sense. It is a buff. It means that you can attack with this, and suddenly it's like, oh, well, there's only so many things you can block, and this thing has so much health, is it even worth it? So, yeah, I like that change. It just makes sense. I don't think it's that huge. Spirit Leech. Hey, 1 extra health. The leech has a strong reward for decks that don't mind killing their own units, but it's so naturally fragile that it struggles to succeed alongside Glimpse Beyond. Yeah, Glimpse Beyond has often just been better. Being able to do it at fast speed is better than being able to do it at burst unit speed. Now it can put up a slightly more spirited defense against the various pies, darts, and flash bombs found all over Runeterra. Yeah, it's a lot less likely to just kind of die to incidental damage, although it's still very fragile. It's no longer ping death. So I like that change. I think that's nice. It might make Spirit Leech actually a bit more viable and as a choice. The Ether Fiend goes down to 6 mana, loses some stats, but can actually come out. In spite of being one of the coolest looking birds in all of Runeterra, the Ether Fiend hasn't really laid an egg in competitive play. By making them cheaper and a little smaller, we think the tempo gained from his kill ability can be used more easily, hopefully giving them a home in Shadow Isle's slay strategies. True, it was just a bit too expensive. Like, it was a kill effect, but you had to kill one of your own things as well, I believe. So it was disruptible kill, and that made it not quite as viable. But if you can play it for 6, you don't have to invest as much mana into doing so. You can just kind of throw it out there and force the opponent to react. And if it doesn't work, hey, at least you have a 5/3 for 6. So I think that is a good change, making that come out a bit sooner. It also curves a bit better in that deck, I think. Seal and Steel. It is a tempting effect, but hasn't managed to darken the doorstep of any viable decks, partly because of how hard it is to use the resulting equipment. While the cost reduction here will naturally make the equipment easier to play, there might be a certain Demacian who takes a particular interest in this new, easier to catch shape. Obliterate an ally and create corrupted form. It doesn't actually say what the change is. Is it just isn't saying it here, but I assume the corrupted form is going to cost less? This corrupted form costs 2 now, which is the threshold for Vayne to tumble and grab it. Or also catch. Catch is also the card. So presumably, although it doesn't say it, we can assume that corrupted form now costs 2 mana and therefore will work with the Targon burst speed spell equip stuff. So that is very nice. That is definitely a nice change. You can only use it on allies, though, which is still a shame. It's not actually removal. Eternal nerfs. Star-tipped Peak goes up to 2 mana. When this change arrived alongside Cosmic Call, Targon hit some peaks in win rate that we'd rather not maintain. We're eroding their advantage a little bit to turn this mountain back into a very large hill. Yep, a bit too strong for that alongside Cosmic Call. That makes sense. Bandle Tree. Ooh, down to 3 mana. Since the Bandle Tree's rework, it's in a healthier spot for the game as a whole, but it's struggled to blossom. With Eternal's higher overall power level and the arrival of the Explorers, we feel comfortable in giving the Bandle Tree back a little more bite to go with its bark. That makes sense. Bandle Tree comes out a bit sooner. It has to see all of the followers, and it'll start generating followers a bit sooner. That is a very nice change for making Bandle City into an eternal win condition. And it won't affect standard, so people should be fine with that. Katarina is now a 3/2. At the end of her run in standard, Katarina was a cut above the rest of Noxus and had to be dulled. Now that she's settled into Eternal and Opulent Foyer has changed, we feel comfortable giving her back some of her edge. Yep, she no longer has to pay for the sins of Gwen in the foyer, so she can go back to being a 3/2, which is great for her. She already kind of went back to hand instead of dying usually, so that shouldn't matter. But it does mean that she is now outside of Quietus range, which could matter. That's nice. Good job, Katarina. Preservationalist. Shurima is meant to have advancing landmarks as a strength, but some of their support for that strategy is held back by their lack of board presence. By giving the Preservationalist a more reliable body, the landmark advancement comes at a lower cost and has more chance to shine. Okay, so the Preservationalist was 5 mana and advanced by 3 or 4, something like that. Now it's 4 mana to do that, which is pretty nice. Desert's Wrath. While Azir has done a solid job of making moves out in the Shuriman Desert, we want to give his army a chance to shine. We should open him up to multiple other synergies in other regions. Yes. Now 3 mana, you get that permanent increase to your sand soldiers. I really like that change because I've always liked Desert's Wrath. It's just been a lot of times really hard to play that and to maintain your tempo. So it costing 3 mana is very nice, very appreciated. And you can do it turn 2 now, which is kind of crazy. Spirit Portal, 3 mana. That makes sense since you had to discard a card. Bandle is supposed to be good at turning a bunch of little things into more threatening but still little things. While Bandle discard strategies have found some footing, this is a cool card that could bridge multiple archetypes if it was good enough, so we're trying to give it a little more bang for the buck. I agree with that. 3 mana, once again, that keeps it in the spell mana range, where you can just use your reserve instead of having to use your mana for the turn. You can actually play a unit on curve and then use all your spell mana to actually Spirit Portal for the buff. So I do like that change. Decreasing the cost of a spell down to 3 is always going to be a big change for that spell. They Who Endure. As an original fixture of LoR, They Who Endure has not managed to last after some rebalancing and the shift to Eternal. With a lower cost, we think they can go back to being the It unit for some games, for some decks to end the game. Okay, so a little bit sooner you can bring out They Who Endure, which if we recall together, I believe that is the one that gets +1. It's an overwhelm that gets +1/+1 for every ally that has died this game. So, yeah, that gives that strategy back again to Freljord, of the just kind of like lose units, play board wipes and lose your own stuff and be fine with it. Make a bunch of tokens, trade, and then They Who Endure to try and win the game. It still is a bit of a primitive strategy, but you can pair that up with Shurima or Shadow Isles typically, and try and make that into a win condition. The Frenzied Skitterer is a 3/3 now. Wow, that's kind of big. Spider Aggro doesn't fit as well with where we want Shadow Isles to land in Standard, but it should still have a chance to shine in Eternal. We're bringing the Skitterer back to its glory days to give Elise and her brood some more finishing power. A 3 mana 3/3 that does all that. That is a big buff. Frenzied Skitterer is definitely strong now. You're going to see it with Nocturne. You're going to see it with Elise. It's going to show up in Path of Champions and be really annoying. So that is a big buff. Tornado Warrior. It's now a 1 mana 1/1. Oh wow, it's so easy to use now. This little guy has never been able to show off his awesome technique because of his power level. By dropping him down to a 1-cost unit, he can live the bouncy house dream, even though you might have to do some extra work to make him a game-ending threat. Yeah. Yeah, he's always been cool, but your ability to just kind of recall constantly has been limited outside of Ari. So being able to make this just a 1-drop gives it a very nice part to the curve. It can go directly Tornado Warrior into Ari, which is nice. And then from there, you can kind of get the ball rolling and hopefully get some keywords that will matter. It is still just a 1/1 at the end of the day, but it can get some pretty strong keywords. What are you going to do with those keywords? Oh, it is getting +1 attack each time, so it will eventually be a pretty strong threat, and if nothing else, it will eventually just kind of trade into something, I guess. So, still kind of a awkward unit to use, but much more usable now that it's a 1-drop. And it can show up randomly with random 1-drop generating effects, which is pretty common. And that's fun. So, it'll come in as a 2/1 with a random keyword when you get it off of some bilge water card effect. And that's cool. It can also work with things that buff 1-drops, of course, if you're really trying to go all in on this Tornado Warrior thing. Concurrent timelines has been adjusted. Instead of granting your Nexus each round, the first time you play a follower, pick blah blah blah, it's now grant your followers in hand when you play me, pick 1 to 3 followers with the same cost, transform me into it. Uh, while moving timelines to a higher cost kept the win rate from being overwhelming, it was frustrating how divergent the timelines were when the card was drawn early versus late. We want to try a small redesign to make it less early game dependent, but also less painful to draw multiples over the course of the game. Now that is interesting. So now it's a lot more like the Demacian card that lowers the cost of everything in your hand, or the... It's now basically a hand buff card. Now that is interesting. And if you really wanted to go all in on it, it's still in P&Z. You can still do shuffle effects to like copy and print more copies of these things so that you can keep doing it. But yeah, now it's a much more tactical card, and that is kind of neat. I think that's overall a nerf for sure. Um, but it's now more tactical to use it. I think that's kind of neat. I like that. Overgrown Snapvine. It now triggers on ally play instead of ally summon. While Snapvine hasn't been choking out the Eternal Ladder, its summon timing trigger was limiting design space for future cards. Since letting it only chomp on play does change a lot of how the card plays, want to give it to an immediate buff. So, it costs 1 less now to play it, and has Fearsome? Didn't it have Fearsome before? I guess not. Now it's Fearsome. Now it triggers on ally play, which is definitely a big deal. That is going to make it uh, a lot less of something. It means that you can't do any of those like, oh, I Vile Feast to summon one immediately, and that's a shame. That means that the opponent can definitely immediately react and stop you from getting any value. But it's 6 mana now, so it's less punishing when that happens, although it still sucks. Yeah. Overall, I think I like that change. It definitely makes sense, and for it limiting design space, if that's the case, it should definitely be changed to make room for future stuff. Personalization. Let's see what we got here. We have... Ooh. Jazz Bard. Oh, look, the jazz meeps in the background. That's cool. And then on level up, just really playing, going to the jazz dimension. Okay, okay. Then we got Ill Beats Alawi. All right. And ooh, looking good. Coming out of her drum is a big tentacle, sound tentacle. Nose ring, big earrings. Okay. So these are characters that exist presumably in the KDA Heartsteel universe. We get Maestro. Maestro Jin. Hello. Put image in new tab. There we go. All right. That is a gun. So his violin and bow combine together to make his ult rifle. And then that is the pistol there. That is pretty cool design. I like that. Also, a bunch of TFT guys are watching in the background. Goes all out. Things just start flying around. Okay. So it still doesn't show him putting those together to make the gun, but it's obvious that that's what that is. Then we get Hyper Pop Lulu. Huh. Okay. So we haven't actually seen any Yordles in the KDA universe. So this makes me wonder, are these actual people in KDA, or is this something like a VTuber, or maybe Gorillas kind of thing, where it's a fictional avatar for the KDA setting, for the music verse? Kind of weird looking. And the two of them teaming up together. Very colorful. I don't think it's my particular favorite. And I assume that that's Pix. Yeah, there's only one of it, so I think that's Pix. Meanwhile, we have the Ziggs. Same band, two of them playing. Glitch Pop. Got the bombs. Got the big bomb in the back. It's again very colorful. I think I like this. I like the Ziggs design a little bit more than the Lulu one. Big explosion flying in the air. The smile. Okay, everything you need for a Ziggs. The head is actually a bomb. Yeah, with a wick. Very colorful. Okay. Tiny violin, very nice. Oh, that's fun. That's cute. Okay, Remix Rumble Bundle, very nice. Good stuff. And then Worlds is coming up. Yada, yada, yada. Moving away. Right ID. Yep, yep, yep. Okay. Let's see. Legend level rewards issue. Prologue rewards. Deluge was having some issues. Consume sigils when buffed on play without getting the reduced cost. That got fixed. That's nice. Subterranean Thunders. Sigils of the Storm would be destroyed along with their stacks when slaying a unit on play in Path of Champions. Nice. Good Good fix there. Celestials cost 0 when recalled after playing Cosmic Call twice. Balin the Benevolent did not die to Sunburst when played on Daybreak. Why wouldn't Balin? That's weird. Okay. Overall, big thoughts for this. Changes, pretty nice. I think I agree with pretty much all of this. Is there anything that's missing? Maybe, but it's a variety patch, and we'll be getting new things in 1 month, so we can look forward to that. In the meantime, we do have some new cards to play with, and they are some late game fun stuff. So if you're going to be trying these out, just make sure that you can defend yourself against aggro. You don't want to die to an Annie before you get a chance to have fun with Kingfisher or something like that. So just make sure, don't just throw these in a deck. You want to be able to think about how you can get to this stage of the game. And yeah, there you go. All in all, things I'm most interested in playing is definitely these three: Kingfisher, Portia, Sephrisa. Not in the same deck. Probably Sephrisa the most, because you can use Call of the Deep, I believe, to lower the cost and draw it from your deck. So, yeah, very nice. That is going to be it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. I've been doing a Song of Nunu playthrough. Make sure to check that out on my channel. And you can check me out on Twitch as well, where I have been doing the wins of the day every day for the last few months. You can check me out live there, or check out the VODs, and you guys all have a good one. Let me know in the comments what you think of some of these new cards. What are you most excited to play with? What's your day one build? And I'll talk to you guys next time.